first-time home buyers, they don't know what they don't know, and so they need somebody to ask questions to, and you're kind of their lifeline to that, and you're their representative, and you can talk to. I mean, you are the representative.
Literally,
yeah. You can talk through something, or maybe get to the bottom of what they're actually asking.
Y'all.
All right.
I'm very nonchalant with the opening. That's the opening. So
okay, cool.
Very low key, like I said. Okay, well, Moon Group, thanks for coming in. This is super fun because I've never done a 4 versus 1 podcast, so you guys can totally just gang up on me right now.
That was our plan.
Yeah, exactly. Just beat me into submission. Well, thank you guys for answering my cold DM first off on LinkedIn. And then doing this. I'm excited about the conversation. It's really fun to have just differencing of opinions and experiences and all that stuff. So before we get into it, I'd like to just do introductions of the team individually. Just give me, how you got here, where you're from, all that stuff. So wherever you guys want to start.
Me?
Yeah, you go.
Okay. I'm Jenny Faye Klooster, originally from the Central Valley in California. I have been self-employed most of my life. I started by owning a couple flower shops in my hometown. I sold those, moved to Los Angeles, did a 7-year stint in a corporate job that gave me a ton of experience, but I wasn't in love. I really wanted to be out of that kind of rat race. So my husband had an opportunity in Nashville, so we decided to make the jump, and I do not regret it.
Amen.
A couple of years after we got here, I started in real estate, and it's been great.
What year did you get here?
2017.
Okay. All right, cool. So you're a transplant just like me.
Yep. Where are you
just
from?
like most people. North Carolina originally.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was in the military, so I jumped around. I was did some time in Texas, South Carolina, New York, Georgia,
All right.
Afghanistan for a stint.
And you've been here how long?
I moved here in 2019, 2020.
Okay.
When I got out of the military. Yeah. So my wife had a couple more years in the military. She was a helicopter pilot, badass, CEO of our company.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So she's way cooler than me. I'm sorry that y'all didn't get her.
Next time
Can
we would
she
like
come
her.
in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know what? Let's just end this. Thanks for coming in, guys. We'll just put her on FaceTime.
What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Army, so we both went to West Point. So
Okay.
graduated from there. That's where we met. And then I was an infantry officer. I did about 6.5 years, and that's kind of where I jumped around to some different states. And then when we landed here, it was like the first time I didn't feel like I was squatting somewhere.
Okay.
Which, like, the military has that feel, right? Because you're there
Yeah,
for so
I bet.
short, I think in 10 years I lived in like 5 different cities, but 10 different apartments or houses.
Wow.
You're just
Wow.
moving all the time because you're deploying and then coming back. And
Like you don't even have
break
time to
your lease.
unpack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't make anything kind of your home. You're not painting the walls. You're not putting pictures
Sure.
up. You're just like, all right, how do I make moving out of here as easy as possible because it's going to come soon.
Yep.
So
Perpetual vagabond.
yeah, that's exactly right. Which is like kind of fun in your 20s,
Sure.
but then it gets really old after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved myself like 10 times, and I was done hauling, mattresses up flights of stairs. So I was like, all right, this is getting old. But when we moved to Nashville, it was like the first. I remember flying in specifically and landed in Nashville. And I felt like I was like home, and we just visited family and stuff like that. But I'd never felt like that flying back into a place where I was living when I was in the Army. So it was really cool to kind of have that new feeling. So yeah, that we don't regret it at all either. We lived in Clarksville and then moved to Nashville, kept the house in Clarksville and stuff like that. So Middle
We
Tennessee's been
experienced
awesome.
that kind of immediate feeling of home too. Once we got out here, obviously we were settled, but when we came to visit, we came in at the end of April to visit just to see if I would be okay with moving here. And we ended up having such a good time that weekend that I immediately started looking. We were in contract of the house, and I had left my job by June 13th.
Oh,
So, I mean,
nice.
it was a very quick decision.
What do you think
for
that
us.
is? What's the magic dust that Middle Tennessee has?
Oh, gosh. I think for us, it was I didn't want to do that LA grind anymore. I don't think that anyone is going to write a song about me when I die that says,
Right.
man, she really commuted really well.
Right.
She really gave it all to
You're
that
on your
commute.
deathbed, like, "Man, I wish I would have spent more time in traffic."
Right. So I wasn't raising my kids the way I wanted to raise them. And so that was a real driving force for me.
Yep.
And obviously my husband's a musician. So for him, he was like, yeah, this is where we're
Very
going to
nice.
go. So.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Let's move on down the line.
Yeah, I'm Kelly Falconberry, and
I love your last name.
Thank you. I married into it. Lana,
Thank you. I married into it.
I didn't come up with it myself.
but like when he told me when we were dating, and he told me his last name, I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
You're like, okay, well,
Interesting. Okay.
it's too early for me to think about it being
Yeah.
my last name, but
But I think I really did say, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah,
when
right.
he told me. But yeah, I moved here in 2006. I'm from Iowa originally, and I really moved down here because I didn't think I could take another Iowa winter. I love Iowa. I'm so proud that I'm from there.
Yep.
I love visiting, but I I just didn't think I could do it one more time.
Yeah.
And I moved here when I was 25, and my sister was down here, and her husband, they were down here, I think like 3 years before I moved down. And it was kind of a whim. I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do next, and kind of floated around jobs and was in corporate for a while. And then my husband and we met in 2019 and got married in 2020. So we had a nice little pandemic wedding, and I was still in corporate at that point, and I got my real estate license in March of 2023. And a few weeks later, found out that I was going to have a baby.
oh, wow.
So, yeah.
What a wild couple of years.
I mean, honestly, yeah, we kind of did all
Got married, changed a career, had
bought a
kid,
house.
Bought a house.
Yeah, did like all the things that show up on your taxes,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So, I just knew that I wanted to have a bit more flexibility. My corporate job was, it took me anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half on really bad days to get home. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to spend time with my son.
Yep.
And so I had seen a friend. One of my friends was our real estate agent, and I had seen him. I used to work with him at one of the corporate places I used to work, and I saw him get his license, and it just got my brain going, and I saw how much he really loved helping people, and I'm like, I really love helping people, and so I just wanted to make that move. I started making those moves while I was still at my corporate job, and was like, oh, maybe I can do it part-time. It's really hard to do
Amen.
real estate part-time. So after I had my son, I left my corporate job in April of last year. So I'm doing it full-time
Congrats.
since then. Thank you.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
So the spark was lit, saw a coworker do it, and you're like,
Yes.
this looks like it could be more up my alley, more
Yeah.
my speed.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. The freedom of the real estate industry and still being super successful in the industry is very appealing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, and we can get into this a little bit more when we start talking about industry stuff, is like if you underestimate it and think, I can just do this on the side, it's
Yeah.
probably not going to work out
Yeah.
so
You're in for
well.
a real disappointment.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wasn't disappointed, but I was like, oh, I don't think I can do
Both.
this and that. I can't take myself out of this to focus on this. It was very difficult to balance both. So
Yeah. Well, I got to
just knew I
commend you
needed-
on making that decision because
thanks.
it's a lot easier to make the other one. Which is like,
Yeah.
well, I'll just stay in this corporate job. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more comfortable. It's
I
like
think I would have died.
Yeah.
My soul would have died. I'm just like, I can't do this anymore.
100%, you know?
Yeah.
We had an interesting conversation today about exactly that. And she put it so poetically. She said, I couldn't afford to leave financially,
Yeah, yep.
but I couldn't afford to stay.
Yes.
My soul couldn't afford
Yes.
it. She was like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And it was just like taking, like you're saying, she wasn't a real estate agent, but taking the plunge in entrepreneurship, which is the same thing when you're
It
going
is,
after your
yeah.
real estate
I mean, and
career.
it's also, that's not to say there's anything wrong with staying in a corporate job. That works for a lot of people.
We
and
need it.
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely need it. And my husband works in a corporate job, and he loves his job. So it just wasn't for me.
Right.
Is-
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so many people need to hear that because it's not for a lot of people, and they stick into it too long, and they're miserable,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they don't see a way out, and all that stuff. So we can definitely get more into that. I find that topic fascinating. So
Yeah, I do too.
cool. Let's keep moving down the line.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I am Katie Bradley. I am the unicorn around here. I'm actually from the area.
Let's give it up. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I win.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in the Tennessee Hills in White House. And so
Yeah.
I grew up all around everywhere. My grandparents were in Lebanon, Mount Juliet, and stuff like that. And then Greenbrier area. So all of it. And I was a music teacher for a really long time. I studied opera in college, and I was in a Talking Heads cover band, These Slippery People. Shout out to the Slippy Peeps.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so played lots of the Nashville stages, and it's been a lot of fun. So I taught music for 9 years in a bunch of different schools. I started in Clarksville, so
Nice.
got that connection there.
Yeah.
My very first day teaching, I had 81 eighth graders in my 8th grade chorus.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
8th grade is hard too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
So-
about me as an 8th grader. Just like one of me in class would have been a nightmare.
My youngest is in 8th right now, and that age of kids,
Boy or girl?
thankfully he's pretty mild, but
Nice.
that age of kids, whew,
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah.
That's just the age when you start thinking you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the beginning when you're like, I got it figured out. You're like so far from the
Parents are,
truth.
parents are so dumb.
Yes, that's the beginning.
They don't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Kids are wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big wake up call, like big life learning lesson for me. And we eventually like got my numbers down to around 60,
Oh,
but still.
much better.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. So I did that for 2 years, and I missed Nashville, I missed home. So we moved back, and I taught in Spring Hill, and then I taught in Nashville, and then I ended in Hendersonville. So I quit when COVID came around. I was already feeling burnout, but when you're really good at your job, they make you do everything, right? And you're a yes person, you just go for it. So it was a lot. And my husband works in software, so
Oh, cool.
it was easy for me to like, by teaching, I'm going to take a couple of years off and refigure out what I want to do. And
Nice.
that led me to real estate. I also had a good friend who was a realtor that sold us our house. And so she kind of took me under her wing, and I joined that company and met all these fine people. And now I'm here with the Moon Group, and I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The what was your favorite part about teaching music?
The musical moments.
Yeah,
Like
I would
making
imagine.
something magical with kids. Like I got to play with kids and instruments music all day.
Right.
Like they're snotty and gross, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I would. It seems like, because my sister was a teacher for a while, and I know a lot of ex-teachers. It seems like there's a shelf life because of exactly what you said. You get burnout because it's a very demanding job time-wise, and it seems like they sell the upside of the job is like you're doing a good thing.
Yeah, you're doing
You're
the
like,
Lord's
yeah,
work.
but I'm dying,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
Making
guys are
zero
kind of
money
abusing me a
and-
little bit.
And
Exactly.
I'm not funded.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
really say that one loud. We don't fund our schools.
Not funded?
at all.
Especially music departments.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
They're
I had
probably
to
the worst.
beg, Yeah.
Anything in the arts.
Which
So-
is just, I mean, the whole education system probably could use some revamping,
some.
Yeah, maybe more than some.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like some of the, there's similarities in the military too, which is like not necessarily a funding problem. It's usually the opposite. It's just a big
Yeah.
waste of money most of the time. But it's like, it is, instead of pay or like respect of your time and your family's time, it's like, no, you're doing Lord's work. You know, you're doing this for your country. You're doing this for your country. And she's like, yeah, but I'm like, just like sitting in a briefing about, you know, making sure I don't use incorrect language at work. Like, this doesn't feel like it's for my country right now. And this is like 90% of my time.
Wow.
This feels like we're wasting our time and money, you know? And I feel like police, firefighters, teachers, they all have similar kind of things where it's like, I want to be spending my time doing this, which is the magical moments teaching kids music. That's like 10% of your time.
Yeah.
The other is the BS stuff that really burns you out. You know, you could maybe get away with just the pay if you were spending all your time doing that thing
With
that you're
the kids,
supposed to do
yeah.
with the kids, teaching music, doing what you love.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that the system supports that.
Yeah.
And that's not just teaching; it's a lot of those other types of systems
Yeah.
that are incorrectly ran. Anyways, I'll get off my high horse, but I feel
We're
you.
up there with you.
We
Right
enjoyed
on.
that soapbox.
Right on. Hell yeah. It won't be the last one I get on. Well, cool. Well, congratulations to you two on taking the plunge into entrepreneurship and all that stuff.
Deep dive.
Yeah, you got to do it. That's the only
Yeah.
way. Feet first.
I love it. It's
Yep.
awesome.
Burn the boats, right? Heck yeah. Tim.
Send it over.
Oh, my name's Tim Kreis. I'm from California as well. Actually,
Ah.
I was born in a neighboring hospital to Jenny's husband.
No kidding.
Kind of crazy, yeah.
That's where the connection
we didn't know,
started.
We didn't know each other until we lived out here, though.
Yeah. It's
That's
kinda
Nashville.
crazy.
That's the magic.
But yeah, so I also have been a freelance 1099 worker my whole adult life, which hasn't been that long, but it's been 11 years, I guess.
Nice.
But I grew up in a family of musicians. My parents were both school teachers, so the whole previous conversation. Yes, fund our schools, please. My parents are retired, so it's not going to help them, but the next generation really could use the help.
Yeah.
But yeah, so played music my whole life. Went to college for it. Went to grad school for it. Thought I had a gig with a major horn section out in Los Angeles. Moved there. COVID hit. Gig fell through. Spent the next 3 years being a background actor, running groceries, doing the LA grind, just trying to make rent, and felt like I was wasting my 20s. And I had two friends out here in Nashville, and I said, screw it, let's go. They were making it work. I took a couple trips out. I felt that a degree of that, like, oh, I can be here. I can do this. I think for me, it was more the community aspect, at least of the musicians here in town. Like I took a trip out here in, I want to say November or something like that, before I moved. And like I came back later that spring, and the people I'd met remembered me. It was like, oh, what? You had no reason to remember me. Like, why? I was here for 10 days. Like,
You got used to the glazed over effect in LA that you get.
yeah. Well, it's,
I
I
didn't
mean,
like that either.
I would go to the same bar like weekly just to hang out down the street in LA, and bartenders just wouldn't remember me. And I'm like,
That's wild.
the same four of us were here last week shooting pool.
Yeah.
Like, we've
You're
done
like,
this for a while now.
I've spent $10,000 here.
Yeah.
Over
Yes.
the last year.
I know you.
Literally.
I know you remember me.
Right.
Stop acting like this.
Right.
It's wild. But so that's what I think really kind of sealed the deal for me for Nashville, was more in the creative community. Yeah, so I made the plunge about 3 years ago, 3 years in March. And I got into real estate because, so I met Jenny's husband first through music. And then Jenny sold me my first house, my apartment. And yeah, we just kind of started talking about it, and I had expressed some interest in getting into the game a little bit, diversifying my income, which I think any musicians that see this, diversify your income, all of you, unless you're like
Killing it.
Yeah, unless you're the Weekend, like diversify your income.
Yeah. And still probably should. You know?
And still probably should. If
You
we're being
never
honest.
know.
Probably does.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this Jenny presented me the opportunity, and I took it. And I'm a relatively new agent. They all have much more experience than I do, but they've all been a wonderful resource to me. And yeah, I'm very excited kind of on this new venture. I was just talking with somebody last night in a rehearsal. Like, I feel like every year I've been in Nashville is a different theme to what happens to me that year. And I think real estate's the theme this time around. We'll
That's
find
awesome.
out. But yeah, that's me.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on the change. So how long have you been a real estate agent?
Oh, 1
About
month.
2 months.
2 months.
One
That's
month, yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
But I love the differencing of experiences. I think that's what makes a good team too. I talk to a lot of teams like this size, and there's varying of ages because clients expect different things. They like to work with different things. We want to be able to still sell them a house, so we got to get them the right agent that's going to fit their needs and all that stuff. And then varying of experiences is super important as well. Keeps the team going, you know. So let's get into the team. Give us a background on the Moon Group, right?
The Moon Group.
Let's give me some background on that. How did it start? What's the big vision? What's the goals? Where's it going?
You know, I had been wanting to start a team for a while, and I decided to make a move from the brokerage that I was in, and my focus was just going to be my team. So when I left, I kind of took a few weeks to kind of regroup and just kind of get my own head straight. And then I really started just being open to what came my way. And these lovely people came my way. And I think personality-wise that we're all a really good fit for each other. We have a lot of opposing strengths and weaknesses, which I think kind of round us out. The biggest thing that I think we all have in common is that we all see the client as kind of the biggest piece of the puzzle. We all have helpers' hearts. Like, we want to be not just getting the deal done, but making sure that everybody involved, most importantly the client, feels whole at the end of it, that they feel whole and heard and satisfied with their experience.
Super important for longevity of the business.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of agents that do it the wrong way, which is like, how quickly can we get to close so I can get paid?
Right.
Which is, you know, whatever. To each his own. But the last thing I'm going to do is then refer that person, you know. And like, I think a lot of real estate companies and agents live on referrals. So making sure what I see the difference is even if doing what's best for the client means less money in the business,
100%.
it's still the right thing to do.
We do it all the time when there are very particular situations that come up, and you know, you just do what you have to do. Like, we're not gonna let her deal fall through over 0.5%. So you know, we gave 0.5% back. Yesterday I had a conversation with a client who had just kind of misunderstood one of our, or I guess the day before yesterday, but whatever, had misunderstood one of our agreements and didn't feel like she should be paying what she was paying. And I was like, okay, well, let's just make it work. Like, what seems fair to you?
Right.
So, like, yes, I could have been a hard ass and just held her to the contract, but long term, our relationship is more important than that. And her feeling satisfied and like not feeling duped. Like, I wasn't duping her,
right?
But she was feeling a certain way, so it's okay. You know.
You know what's interesting about that? It's there's a principle, and I can't remember the name of the principle, but it's basically when an expert has to explain something that they are an expert in, or explain it or feel it every single day. They struggle to explain or understand how the other person can understand it. Right. So it's like when we were in I used to own a restoration company, and even something like, you have an insurance loss in your house. That was like a Tuesday for us, right?
Yeah.
But you're going into their house and their house just flooded. And that's probably the only time in their life that's ever going to happen. So it's a unique time for you to go in and have to be like, hey, these are the steps. This is what's going on. And remain like aware that this is a life-changing event for them, but this is the second or third one you've seen that day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to see 2 or 3 more tomorrow. So I think that's so important to put it in y'all's perspective. It's like, we're not duping you. This was talked about very openly before, we signed. You understood all this.
Also, the contract was very clear.
Right.
Yeah.
But
it's maybe the first time they bought a house.
Yep.
Or they haven't bought a house in 20 years. And it just didn't register with them what that was.
Yep.
Well,
But
there's
that's
a
the
lot
hard
of
part of
information coming at you when you're doing that too,
Right.
especially for the first time. If you've not done that before, then it's hard to remember all the things that you talked about.
Right.
So I totally get it.
Especially if it's like almost like another language most of the time. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't know what any of this is or what that means or what this is. So I mean, I think that's why it's important to work with a company that has ethics and standards and morals. You know, it's like, because when it comes down to that, you're right. You could be a stickler, and you'd have every right to be. I hate to even call it a stickler. It's like, you have every right to be like, nope, this is what the contract says. Sorry.
Yep. She even said, well, I want to honor the contract.
Right.
But I could tell that wasn't going to make her happy. And I do attribute the misunderstanding to myself. I didn't explain something properly. And, lesson for next time.
But that's the sign of a good leader. You know, that's exactly that's going to create more and more customers down the road. That's how I would want to be treated if I was a client.
Thank you. Me too.
Like we said before, I want to get into some of the changes in the industry. I think it's important for homeowners to understand what the changes are, what they were prior, and then what to expect. Because I think the big problems that occur for homeowners buying their first house or their first house in a long time is they don't know what to expect, when to expect. They're worried about the money they've saved up, and then all of a sudden they got to pay commission. It's a little confusing, right? So would you mind kind of breaking down the changes and all that stuff just so new homeowners have a good understanding of it?
Sure. I would start with not a lot has changed. What I feel this settlement has done the most is just create transparency where there were gray areas before. And when I say gray areas, I just mean understanding. We haven't changed our practice. My first brokerage was a great brokerage. My broker was a stickler on paperwork. So because of that, I've been taught really well how to do the paperwork for a full and complete file.
Right.
Tennessee has we've always had a buyer's rep agreement the whole time I've been a realtor, at least. So using a buyer's rep agreement is not new to us either. We were already using it in the way that it was meant to be used. So no real changes for us in that way. I would say maybe I'm explaining it a little more deeply when I'm going into it with my buyers. And that's because now fewer sellers are offering compensation, or they might be in this position where they can or cannot afford the compensation. So, I just want to make sure that we're not breaking hearts. I don't want to lead anyone to the perfect house and then they can't close because, oh shoot, I have to pay a commission.
Right.
So buyer's rep, that was already in place for us. We've already been doing that. That's not new for us. There were a lot of states, I want to say there were 19 states that didn't have buyer's rep agreements already. So that's going to be new for realtors practicing in those areas.
And buyer's rep means, from just a homeowner's perspective, that means, hey, I've chosen you guys to represent me as a buyer. Now you can go out, look for properties for me, show me properties, things like that, right?
Yeah, it's the agreement between the buyer and the realtor. Well, actually, it's the buyer and the realtor's brokerage is who the agreement's really with. But it lays out completely what they can expect to pay as far as commissions go. It lays out completely what we can expect from each other. It's the place where we can put exactly what they're looking for, price range, terms, and size, area of property, that sort of thing. So that agreement covers more than just commission. But I would say that right now, the commission is probably the number one thing that needs to be explained in there, because they need to know what they are potentially looking at down the road. So if I set my own prices. I can work for 3% or 2% or whatever makes sense for me. I work for 3%. So if my buyer sees that on there and says, well, I'm not going to be able to come up with that, then we have to have a conversation about it. And would that result in me lowering my percentage? Perhaps.
Right.
Or might I try to advocate for the seller to pay for them?
Why would a seller not pay?
Well, money.
But if it's coming out of the proceeds of the sale? Because that's what happened previously, right?
Well, and that is still how it happens
Sometimes.
a lot of times.
Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a little, there's two ways of looking at it. And some people are like, well, the buyer is paying because they're buying the property.
Right.
And the seller is like, but it's on my, it's in my line items when we close, so I'm paying it, you know?
Right,
So
'cause
it,
it's coming out of it. Yeah, that's
right. So
interesting.
there's, you know, different ways of looking at it. At the end of the day, both realtors, the listing agent and the buyer's agent, are doing a lot of work to get from A to closing, you know?
Right.
So when I'm talking with my sellers, I tell them, you know, this is not new. You've never had to pay 6%. That's not real. You get to decide what you're selling your house for. And then if they decide that they're only going to pay, you know, maybe only my commission, or maybe they're only going to pay my commission and 1% or whatever, then we talk about what that could mean, whether that X out some potential buyers who maybe wouldn't be able to look at that property at all because they are not going to be able to come up with that commission, or whether they might not get a full price offer for the house, or, you know, whatever the case may be. We talk through
Right.
all the potential pitfalls for not offering compensation. But now with the new rules, there's no place to really put that anyways. So people are writing it into the contracts, and then we're negotiating from there. And I really think that that's kind of a healthier way of doing it than just assuming straight out of the gate that this is what they're paying.
Yeah, big
Well, you
time.
know, like maybe you thought that you were going to pay that when you were going to get $500,000 for your house, but now it's been sitting and you're maybe considering taking $440,000. So why should you have to pay the same amount of commission? Maybe it's different. It gets to be different now based on the offer. So I think
like
that
that.
it's a little more flexible. It's more transparent. And I personally don't feel that it has impacted my business negatively at all.
That's awesome. You know, I think the common thing I hear when I have this conversation is the really, really good agents, the really, really good companies say exactly what you just said, which is like it's been no effect.
It's just business as usual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the bad ones that are like, this is the end of me, right? Because I think now they have to provide value, and they probably haven't prior to, but good companies and good realtors like yourselves have always provided value. So I think that's the big challenge now to realtors is like from the buyer side, if, you know, you're going to pay me $30,000 out of pocket now, I better be providing a lot of value. Like, and I think that's the message, and showing a homeowner who's never bought a home, that's the big challenge from an outsider looking in.
Yep.
It's like, how do you convey to the 25-year-old couple that just got married, has been saving for, you know, 5 years or maybe 30, whatever, however old they are, that, hey, on top of that $50,000 you're going to have to put down, you're going to have to pay an additional $20,000 in commissions. And it's important, and it's worth your time to do so. It's just like in restoration, right? It's like, unless you felt the pain of your house flooding, you don't take preemptive steps to make sure it doesn't happen. Same thing in real estate. If you've never bought a house, it's very hard to understand the value of that amount of money unless you try to do it yourself. And then you're like, okay, this is why.
Yep.
Because there is so much behind the scenes that's going on when it comes to realtors and getting the house right, and dealing with the title company, the mortgage company, and all the paperwork, and the buyer's agent, and doing all of the things that you guys have to do to make sure that this house and the biggest investment that this person's going to make, it goes smoothly, it stays on track, and they get it. So yeah, value is kind of where we're at. So from a buyer's perspective, Kelly, this one can kind of go to you. Is there red flags that a homeowner should, if they're going to buy their first house and they're working with a brokerage that's not y'all, or realtors that aren't y'all, what's a red flag they should be like, oof, maybe I should look at a different realtor or talk to some other people? Or is there anything like that we can give some advice to?
Oh gosh. I think, you know, just a realtor who's not willing to have the difficult conversations, someone who is, you know, especially with like the buyer's rep agreement, that is something that is, if you've not had those conversations, the very frank conversations, then it is a very challenging thing to do. But I just think if there's a realtor who maybe isn't willing to, well, I don't even think that's legal. They can't not show you a house because they're not paying a commission or things like that.
Right.
I think someone who is willing to work with your budget and take your life circumstances into consideration. I really think that is something that you need to look for in a realtor. As far as red flags go,
If they don't answer their phone,
yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that's a
worst.
yes.
that would be my biggest red flag. But honestly, I think that people work the way they work, and not all realtors do it the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think a part-time realtor is a little harder to serve their client than a full-time realtor is. But if they've, made it clear up front what their parameters are, and they can sort of do it.
Right.
So I mean, those things would be
Yeah.
red flags for me as somebody who doesn't do it full time and somebody who's not easy to reach.
Yeah. I also think, I talked to somebody in another state. They're also a realtor, and I was looking for a referral, just a referral agent. And I don't think it's going to work out with this person because I talked to them about the buyer's rep agreement, and they said, I don't really do that. I'm not gonna do it. Like they weren't. I'm like, but you have to do that. So that was a red flag for me as finding somebody for a referral, because I'm like, I just want somebody who's going to be honest,
Yeah.
and that does not signify that you're being honest with me.
That's a huge red flag.
Yeah, huge. I will not be calling him.
But
again.
would the buyer even know that that's a red flag?
That's what I was about to
That's
say.
a red flag that we can pick up, but that
Yeah.
unfortunately that buyer is just fully unrepresented.
That's exactly. That's why this is important. These conversations are super important, because even if one person hears that, we might have just saved them a tremendous heartache.
Yeah.
And probably a lot of money and maybe some legal issues, right? Because you're right. If you buy, on average, how many times do you buy a house in your life? 3 times, 4 times,
Sure,
on average.
yeah.
I don't know. If you move every 10 years, maybe you're buying your first house when you're 30, and then you're 3 or 4 houses, 5 houses in, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So you forget how all of it works, and you don't need to know because you got a realtor, right? So it's like the unknown red flags are the scariest when it comes to trying to choose. And that's why it's nice to have a relationship.
Yeah.
It seems like a very big relationship business.
A good reason to not represent yourself, if I could be anecdotal for a minute, is I have recently had 2 experiences with buyers. One was not in a buyer's rep with me and went forward directly to a seller's agent and negotiated their own deal. And now I'm getting calls about, well, when do I have my inspections? I don't know. Is it in your contract? I'm not your realtor. I don't know. Well, when can I send you my contract? And it's like,
if you send me commission.
Yeah.
Right.
If you sign this, if you sign
Right.
this paperwork.
and it's just been I can see that, she's not getting her inspections. She's on the hook to buy this house. Good luck. And I hope the house is probably fine, but I wouldn't buy a house without inspecting it.
Right.
So that's pretty wild to me. The other is a new buyer that I'm working with right now. Is in a rep agreement with me, went to look at a FSBO home for sale by owner. And the owner was like, are you working with an agent? And he was like, yeah, I am. And he's like, well, that's a shame because you won't get a good enough price on the house because I'm going to have to pay that agent fee and blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at this house that's sitting on the market for 180 days. And I told my client, you're going to get a hell of a deal on that house if you want it.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
So, these are things, this guy is negotiating his own house for sale, which is his prerogative, but he doesn't even have a plan in place for paperwork.
Right.
Who's going to do the paperwork?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Those are detrimental issues that he's going to learn. To further emphasize the point of the huge benefit of a realtor, we because you mentioned the timeline thing, right? 180 days in the market, whatever.
Sure.
We had an Airbnb a couple years ago, and we had our business, and we needed to free up some cash to buy out a partner. And we had the Airbnb, and we were like, well, we've probably got about 150 in equity sitting there, and we needed some of that to do what we need to do over here. So went to our realtor and was like, all right, hey, we need to list it, and we need it like as quick as possible. And some of the other units had been on the market for like 60, 90 days. He was like, look, I'm going to be straight up with you. I don't know how quickly we can get rid of this, and because of these reasons. Dude had it sold in like 3 weeks. There is 0% chance that I could have done all of that and did my job and my family and all this other stuff, bullshit I've got to deal with, right?
Yes.
So, like, I think I really want to emphasize that people don't understand that unless they've been in that position, which I'm preaching to the choir right now. You guys know this, but for anybody who's listening, is there's a reason why it's a job. You know, it's just like, sure, I could learn how to do my taxes. You know, I could learn to be an accountant, but there's a reason why it's a 40-hour-a-week job.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why there's certifications and licenses, because it is far more in depth, and the repercussions of you messing it up are pretty bad, right? And it's the same thing with real estate. You can get yourself in a big financial problem if you don't have somebody guiding you through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another soapbox of mine.
Yes.
But-
Well, I just.
But I mean, everything from, you're not wrong. Everything from your inspections to disclosures. Like, Joe Blow selling his house doesn't know what kind of disclosures you need. He doesn't know what he's supposed to disclose to you as the seller, and he doesn't know about inspections. And, you know, if you don't have somebody on your team it's an intricate process.
Yeah, and look, I'm in tech, right? I should be advocating for a new technical solution that would streamline this for homeowners, right? But I'm not. I'm doing the opposite. And what's really interesting, if you look at the stats, maybe you guys have seen this, since the 90s and to today, right? We've had the biggest tech boom in the history of mankind.
Sure.
One would guess, or I would guess, that the amount of realtor sold homes would have decreased at the same rate technology increased, right? Because you could say, okay, technology could replace some of that stuff. It's done the exact opposite. More people are using realtors today in our high-tech environment than ever before, which is bonkers to me.
It's interesting.
Right? And it's like, doesn't follow any sort of like other trajectory in any other industry, which is like, you've automated things, you've removed people and things and processes with technology. Why do you guys think that is? Let's go down to this end of the table. Why do y'all think that is? Because that might be a generational thing. It might be, I don't know. You know, what's your initial thoughts on that? I know that's probably the first time you've heard it, so I'll keep kind of delaying as you're thinking about your answer. But, you know, any initial thoughts on that? Why are people more inclined to use realtors nowadays than ever before?
I think they're smarter, you know, like
A more informed buyer.
yeah, people realize like their time is valuable. They only have these certain amount of resources. Let me get somebody who is an expert in the field. There you go, an expert in the field to help me through, because you know people don't have time for all of that. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. We can use Google and ChatGPT our way through anything, but it's worth it to have somebody in your corner, I think.
You can still, that's an interesting point, because it really comes down to like the information, right? The informed buyer. Whereas like in the 90s and before the internet, we were probably just like uninformed buyers. So we just didn't understand the hazards of being like, I'm just going to sell my house. Here you go. Boom, 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 done. Right.
Like
And
I'm not going to represent myself in a legal case. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely
why would
not.
Right.
I'm not
Exactly.
going to try and like do that by myself, you know? Like I'm not going to try and surgery myself. Like
Right.
that's why we have experts.
Yes, exactly right.
I also think like when you're saying that, you know, with technology and everything, all I kept thinking of is when I am trying to call like a billing department somewhere and, you know, press 1 for, you know, you're just sitting there going, representative, because a lot of times the person or the question that you need to talk to an actual person, have an actual conversation with them. and you need to be able, like, whatever automation they have, there's so many little nuances to everybody's everyday lives or thoughts they have going on in their head. And just especially with first-time home buyers, they don't know what they don't know. And so they need somebody to ask questions to. And you're kind of their lifeline to that. And, you know, you're their representative, and you can talk to, I mean, you are the representative.
Literally.
Yeah. You can talk through something or maybe get to the bottom of what they're actually asking. And conversations in that way are so important. So I do think, sure, you can automate a lot of things,
Right.
but and streamline it, but it's never going to have that human touch to it.
Right.
If I could add also that the process has gotten more complicated. When my parents bought a house, it was, you know, I mean, it wasn't a handshake deal, but like, you know, it was more of a, right. It was more of a, there was still tons of paperwork, but it wasn't like it is now. And I think that the addition of all of these documents and all of the very rigorous steps that you have to go through to get into a house, that those were put in place to protect the consumer. And I think that they're good to be, I'm glad that they're there, but also if you buy a house every 10 years, you're not going to remember it 10 years later.
That's correct.
I'm doing this every day. I get it. I have muscle memory with all of these documents. I wouldn't want to, like Katie said, represent myself in court.
Yeah.
Why would you do that to yourself? You stand to lose so much. I mean, statistically, nationwide, for sale by owner homes leave 20 to 30% on the table.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And you would think that these people who sell their own homes would see that stat, or do they see it and they just go, nah, not me.
Right.
I think that's what what's happening.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I do got to call it out. Obviously, representing yourself in court is different just because, like, a lawyer spends 3 years going to school to be a lawyer.
Well, I
Right?
think
So it is
realtors
quite
should
different.
spend a little more time to be a realtor.
Now, I agree with that. I do agree with that, especially because the realtor is like the arbiter of the information, right? The MLS,
Yep.
right? Like that's the big reason. That's one of the big reasons why you can't just go sell your own home, or it's a lot more difficult. Right?
Sure.
Is your access to the things that are required. Well, let's dig into that. What would you like to see realtors have more education on, experience on, knowledge on before they start selling homes?
Well, I mean, I had to spend, 90 hours? You know, you're closer to it than I am, Tim. 90 hours, was it total?
Yes.
So I have to spend 90 hours. So that's basically 2 full work weeks.
Yeah.
And then, boom, I get my
Yeah.
license.
Right.
That's not enough.
That's a low barrier.
And I'm going to tell you, I didn't understand shit when I came out of there. Like
Right.
nothing. Everything I've learned since getting my license.
Right.
I mean, obviously we know some of that stuff, but it's not, you don't really learn it until you put it in practice.
Yeah.
I would say that if I had to change it, I would probably make getting your license more difficult. The industry will not hurt from that. There's an
Right.
86%, that number, 86% is how many people leave the industry in their first 2 years, never renew their license.
Yep.
So if we make it a little bit harder, I don't think that the industry will get hurt from that. I also think that there should be a minimum required hours of shadowing. And there's none of that. There's
Like a residency
none of
program
that. Yes.
almost.
Like I think it's kind of absurd that we don't have that because, and I mean, this might be unpopular to realtors, especially incoming realtors, but
Well, it would be unpopular to the bad ones.
right,
so
I guess.
That's okay.
I feel like we too easily get to help people with their biggest investment of their life up
I
into
also
that point.
think that's part of the reason people will like struggle to say, hey, the 3% commission out of pocket's worth it, because you're exactly right. They go, well, there was a class, and this is the first sale, and now you're making $30,000 off me. Like, what the hell, you
Yeah.
know? But if it's looked at like, hey, there was 2 years of residency, with whatever, if there was more of a barrier, that would also kind of change the stigma. I do think that's one of the positives from the lawsuit. I think it does add a little bit of a barrier, and it makes it a harder profession to be successful in, which is good, especially coming off of the 2020, 2021 years where it was like, you could come in and be a new realtor and kill it.
If you know a realtor that says they miss those times, judge them appropriately. I'm telling you, those times, were we making a bunch of money? Yes. But how counterintuitive is it to look at your client and be like, hey, if you're going to get this house, you're going to need to waive appraisal and you're going to need to waive inspection. Sorry.
And you need to go 100K over.
Yeah, you're going to need to do that.
And if you got cash, it'd be great.
Your bag of cash that you have under your bed, you need to bring that.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that time was really hard for me because I felt so uncomfortable telling. I had clients who are also my friends, but they've bought many houses in their lives, and every time he was like, "Are you serious? Like I can't negotiate from these inspections?" And I was like, "Sorry. You can, but we won't get accepted. Just so you know."
Yeah.
And he needed to learn that the hard way. He was like, "I'm not giving up appraisal or inspections," and we wrote lots of offers that didn't get accepted.
Yep.
So it was what the market was, and that is the king of all indicators. The market decides. But for me, it felt really off.
I think if you were a realtor and you started during those years, you had a very skewed view of what the industry actually is.
Right.
I was about to say, it would have been nice to have that money.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely would have been nice, but I do think I'm coming in at a time where I actually, and I don't want to insult people who came in at that time, but I have to actually work. Like,
correct.
I have to put in the
Pick up the phone.
Yes.
And make the calls. And,
Yep. And it's
negotiate. You have to do your job.
Yeah, I have to. That is what I have to do, and I don't think I would have learned that if it was just kind of like falling in my lap all the time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I really hope I'm not insulting people who came in those years and then left. And
no, I've talked to a lot of them.
If they're insulted, then they're
that's
reflecting
true.
on themselves.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of them, and they've said the exact same thing you're saying about themselves. They're like, I had a very different experience, and it probably hurt me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is the secret to riches.
Yeah.
So
you have to,
most.
I'm sorry.
No.
You have
go
to
ahead.
unlearn so many things, and then I feel like I'm learning it the proper way.
Right. That's exactly. You're building the foundation.
Yeah.
It's like most realtors the first year, especially if they're starting out. It's like, all right, the safest way to do this is just plan on not selling anything for the first year. So you better have some savings lined up, and you better be able to get yourself through it. But when you started in 2021, it was like, you sell 12 houses, all 100K over, and you're just making more money you've ever made in your entire life. But then the next year hits, and it's really like your first year, and you sell 2 houses, right? And you're like, fuck, I shouldn't have bought that car, or should have bought my new house, like all that stuff. So very skewed view of what the industry was during those times.
Yep. Yeah.
But to our point earlier, I think that invited some, I'm not going to call them bad players, but that might have invited people into the industry for the wrong reasons. And I think that the new laws in place, to a great team, it's not a big change. But to somebody who got into the industry for maybe not the right reasons, it is a big change. And they're not going to last, right? It should either create a barrier or weed them out. So now we're left with only the people that we want to pay because they're good at their job and they do the right things. Right. To me, that's like the positive way of looking at the law changes.
Anything that provides more transparency to the consumer cannot be a bad thing.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yep.
Well, cool. So we'll start to wrap it up, but I do want to kind of get into what our business is doing and how we're working with realtors and how we're trying to help homeowners. So like a little bit of background on us. We had our restoration company for about 4 years and sold it last year. So I started that when I got out of the military in 2020. I'm not a handyman. I don't know anything about any of that. So I just had to learn it on the job. So when you're talking about, I wish there was more training for realtors, my thought was, I wish there was more training for what I was doing, because I was in houses like, okay, I hope this is right.
Are you contractor?
Yeah, so we were in restoration. We specifically did like water, fire, mold, insurance losses, where we come in, dry it out, or fix the property, and then build it back to its pre-loss condition. So
And contractor school is similar to real estate school, where they just teach you to stay out of contractor jail, but
There-
they don't really teach you to swing a hammer.
there's no school.
Right.
It's literally like you own the company. We had to have, in Tennessee, the law is anything over $3,000 if you're doing work in someone's home, and under $25,000, you have to have a home improvement license. And you can't sub anything out, because then you're a general contractor, and then you have to have a general contracting license. So all I have to do is like pay the state a certain amount of money, and then
First
have
and
my own
foremost.
guys. They have to be W-2, so you'd have to hire people, and then I could do $25,000 of work below. If it's under $3,000, I don't have to have anything. So anyone can be a handyman, right?
So
With-
per job, 25,000 or low per
or
job.
lower. Yep. And you can't sub it out. The second you like, if you needed a plumber and you hired a plumber, you're now a general contractor and you're breaking the law.
Oh, I see.
So now you have to be a general contractor. So that's a whole different license. It's a lot harder to get, and you have to have bonds. You have to do all this stuff, right? So, and then like in Texas, there are no rules. There's no licenses for anything. I could build you a house with no license, and that's completely legal.
Wow.
Right. So
That's
it's like
wild. Texas is wild.
these industries are crazy, right? And so getting into like kind of where we came from and where we're trying to go is, I was in this business, we killed it. I just was like working my ass off, right? I was driving the van, working the company, doing all that. We hit $1 million in sales in the first year. I was super happy with it. I burned out. We kept building it, hired people, sold it. But it was really during like that time where I was just talking to homeowners by the thousands. And what became painfully obvious is they had no idea how to maintain what is their largest investment. They had no idea how to project out and plan for what happens when my HVAC system goes out. What happens when I need a new roof? When am I going to need these things? Who do I call when this happens? Or how do I deal with this? So I was like, okay, because we would go out on these losses that were $50,000 losses, and they would have been no loss, $0, if they would have known where their water shut-off valve was. But instead, they had to call the fire department to come out there and turn their water off. Now we're using the fire department to come out there and just go poop and turn their water off,
Oh my
which
gosh.
they should have known where it was, right?
Yeah.
And now that family is getting dropped from their insurance because there's a loss and the insurance is going to pay for it, but now they're not going to re-up them because insurance companies are just losing money hand over fist every year now. So it's like, it was this cascading thing that all started with knowledge of your home, knowledge of maintaining these systems. So we were a home service company, so we were working with the plumbers, electricians, and all this stuff. And I started to learn kind of their problems day in and day out. And there was some similarities across all the industries, right? There was a through line. It was just like, I'm sick of traditionally marketing. Nothing gets me a return. Every lead source is garbage. They gouge me. It's horrible, blah, 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 right? So I was like, all right, we've got to start coming up with a solution that solves both of these. So we created our company called My Home. And what My Home does is it's really meant to be the expert for you in all things home maintenance, home improvements. So that way you don't have to. It's similar like what you guys do. We understand that homeowners now value their time more than anything else. They aren't the expert in their HVAC system. They shouldn't have to be, just like they shouldn't have to be an expert in real estate to sell a home. That's why they have y'all. So we like to position ourselves right there, right, to where it's one spot where you have all the highest vetted providers. So we interview all of our providers. We screen them. They have COIs. They have W-9s. They have a certain threshold of reviews they have to meet. So they're really the highest quality. We cover over 50 different industries. You could build a home on our platform. And what happens is the homeowner, it uses AI and all the newest technology. Homeowner goes in, takes a picture of their issue. Let's say it's a leaky faucet. Answer a couple questions through the AI bot. And then they'll get quotes from the highest quality providers within 120 seconds. So we took what is this like 4-week process of trying to call a plumber and get somebody on the phone and then get on their calendar, have them come look at it, give them a quote, and then maybe get a different quote and all this other stuff. And it's now about a 120-second process.
Is this an app?
Yeah, it's all mobile app right now. We launched last year. We started building in February last year. We launched in August. And since August to now, we've really been going through like our beta product, getting users to use it, making corrections, fixing bugs, and just going through the process of introducing a new product into the market. We've had really cool early adoption across the country. We've got over 300 vendors. We're primarily here, but we do have vendors in about 25 different states. They're just kind of find us organically because vendors, so home service providers, love it because they're not charged unless the homeowner picks them.
Yeah.
So that is a huge benefit to them, because currently, like the way an Angie works or a Thumbtack is they get sent a lead. Even if it's not in your industry, you're getting charged $30-$40. And then it's just a race to see who can bother the homeowner the most.
Yeah.
So it's just a process that no one likes, right? So we've set out to really fix that and make it a process that everybody enjoys. So for the homeowner on our app, there is no, your information's not shared. Everything goes through the app. You can share it if you want, once you choose the vendor you want, or you can keep that private and just communicate through the app, right? So we really try to give the homeowner the power there. All that to be said, the reason why we love Realtors is when we first started this last year in February, we were like, okay, this seems like a great product for Realtors to just refer their clients, because we know that they get the, do you know a good plumber, do you know a good HVAC guy, blah, 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 right? They're in right when they're selling a home, right? When all that stuff is needed.
Yeah.
But as we launched, our Realtors weren't referring it like we thought. So we were like, wow, what's going on? We sat down with them and talked, and finally over months of conversations, we learned that they were like, yeah, your app is so good that my client's never going to need me again. Right, we kind of want them to call me in 6 months and be like, "Hey, do you know a good plumber?" Because it keeps me relevant, it keeps me top of mind. So I was like,
We also spend a lot of
Truth.
time with our networks,
Right.
and I want them to get my plumber because I know
100%.
how good he is.
And that was the other thing we
that
learned.
was-
That was the exact other thing we learned. We're like, okay, cool. So we went back to the drawing board and we're like, all right, how do we, because we want to work with Realtors, because we want to provide a product that is fun and exciting for you to refer, that provides more value to you and more value to your homeowners and clients. So over months and months and months of designing something, taking it to Realtors, them saying that shit, fix it, we finally figured it out. So
Bet that felt great.
yeah, I know. I was like, oh my God, I think we're here. So we've white labeled our product. And what that means is like, our product is now white labeled with your brand, your name, your face, your contact information, and all of your vendors.
Smart.
So that way you just share it at closing, share it on social, share it to any of your clients. When you get that, hey, do you know a good plumber? You share them their link, and then they're in the app with your name and face all over it, right? And what we're seeing from our users is they're using it about 2 times a month. They're opening and going in at about 2 times a month. So that means if it's your link, they're seeing your face and your name. It's a touch point that's automatic over and over and over and over and over again. Provides more value, right? It's your vendors. It's free for them. It's free for you. So it really is kind of like the kind of the perfect touch point. What we've also done there is the realtor gets an email every time their client uses it. So that way, if you haven't talked to Bob in 5 years and you see he's prepping to sell, which we see in our app all the time, then you just, oh, hey, Bob, how's it going? And then, hey, I'm glad you reached out. I'm prepping to sell, whatever, right? So we've developed that with Realtors over the last year to really try to meet their exact needs. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you guys some QR codes. If you guys can scan it, I want y'all to check out.
Went straight to get the app.
Okay,
the Moon
go ahead,
Group.
and then
It
Kelly,
says
that's
the Moon
you.
Group, take the hassle out of home maintenance with my home. Download the app now and
there you go.
experience
So download that. And
the
that should
convenience. That's awesome.
lead directly to, and that's what you would share with your clients. The first screen you see should be your face, your name, and then all of y'all's preferred vendors that you sent me. And there should be.
I sent a handful of my faves.
Yep.
So how easy is it to add?
So you tell me who they are. I add it in 5
Perfect.
minutes.
All right. Oh, look, there's my people.
Yeah, and your face. All right, so we're
Look at that.
2 for 2, baby. Let's go.
I want one.
All right, let's make you one. Can you say that into the mic really clearly?
I want one.
What about me?
Yeah, exactly. So click get started. I just want to show you some of the pieces of this. So you'll see the home screen now. This is the main functioning of our app. But with your link, every time your homeowner, your client uses it, they see your face.
Love that.
So then if you go into profile at the bottom right, you'll see 2 things in there. It's another way for they can access your preferred vendors, but it's also a way they can contact you immediately. So if you hit your contact button, then your number and your email will pop up.
Hey.
Boom.
So our goal there
amazing.
is you're always top of mind every time they use the app.
That's
And it's
brilliant.
automatic.
You should come to our.
really tried to solve that.
That's amazing. How do I give this to my clients?
So the link, let me send you a link. So you scan the QR code, which I can give you too, which is what a lot of realtors are just putting on like their marketing material.
Sure.
But I've just got a link I can send you, and
Okay.
you can just text that to them.
Okay. This is really cool.
Say it more clearly in the microphone.
This is really cool. I love it.
Yeah, I got you.
So if I don't have a professional recommendation in a certain area, you put in with your most popular one.
Exactly. Yep. And then like the great part is our goal is really goes, hey, use this. It's got all my preferred vendors in there that I trust. But then if your homeowner needs something out of the wazoo, like a brick mason, right? They can just go in and use the app as a normal customer would, and then find great vendors as well that we've gotten on, right? So then you're still kind of the hero to them.
Yeah.
Because they're still getting their need done.
And what happens if my client comes in and picks Everclean Power Wash, and that's one of my vendors, does Everclean Power Wash get charged for that?
Not in that situation. Nope.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure that, obviously you're already referring these people and they're not paying for a referral fee there or a lead. Right. So in that connection, they're not going to get charged anything. What we want to do is get them on as a normal vendor as well. That way they can have access to the other thousands of homeowners in Nashville that are using it, hopefully get them more business. In that scenario, they would be charged if they get connected to a client outside of your network.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And that's just how we make money.
That's cool. No, I like that.
Yeah, when you go to her vendor event tomorrow, you'll meet these people.
Yeah,
That's
actually,
perfect.
you will meet all of these people, and I'll be able to show them in real time what's happening,
That is amazing.
or how I would use it.
I'm glad you guys absolutely love it. It's the best thing you've ever seen in your
I'm
entire
so
life.
excited to
appreciate
use
it.
it. Yeah.
It is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, we're this is version 1 for our realtor side. We're on like version 5 for the normal kind of app. So this year's big for us. We just hired one of the best marketing companies in the world, and we're really pushing this thing. So we're venture backed. We have some really great investors that can put us in some really cool spots and partner with some great people. So we're excited just to get in as many people's hands as possible, and then keep improving on it. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
well, let's do this. I'd like to get any final thoughts from the Moon Group. Is there any burning kind of do's and don'ts, lessons learned from homeowners, realtors of the past that you'd like to end us with, or anything like that?
I mean, do you guys want to go first, or?
Let me think.
I think
you go.
for me, I would say practice loyalty in your lives. Like, find people that you know, love, and trust, and continue to know, love, and trust them. I don't think that hopping from realtor to realtor, trying to avoid a fee, is going to serve you. So I would say go to the realtor that you have a relationship with. Hopefully it's me. And if
Or
it's
me.
or her or him,
Anyone on the Moon Group, you'll be on.
anyone on the Moon
Yeah.
group,
Yep.
or on the Moon.
Yeah, that'd
It's
be an
fine.
awesome one.
Like,
Yeah.
if you have a realtor on the Moon, by all means, choose
Use
them.
them. Yeah. They're doing something right. Yeah.
Right. But I think, that's how we're, moving forward. That's what we do that's what we want from our clients.
Right.
We want that long-term loyalty that is a reflection of the service that we pour into them. And I would say, like with any kind of sticky situation that you could get yourself in, there's a lot to know in this industry, and you should probably have somebody on your side.
Yep. Know, like, and trust is usually what I hear. I like, know, love, and trust. That's way better. Yeah, that's great. What else we got? Any other parting words of wisdom?
I mean, as a newer realtor, I guess, I'm in the middle of building my career, and I'm learning a lot from Jenny. I have learned a lot from Jenny over the past year, and something that I'm learning from her is just to stay consistent. And I will be honest, she and I, we chatted this morning. I was having a not great, mentally not a great day, just wondering if I'm like cut out for this. And she just reminded me that I'm part of a really great team that is supporting me, and that consistency is going to be the key to all of it. And we're all just learning together. And I guess maybe if I had to say anything to any other newer realtors is just to stick with it and keep pushing and take a chance on yourself.
Amen.
I agree totally with Kelly. Like, consistency, whatever you're going to do consistently is going to make you successful. So it's even like with just anything in your life, like just being consistent makes you a better human in general, I think. I think it's like being a realtor, it's the most important to be open, to be honest, to really lay out everything. That way there's no miscommunications, like things can't be misconstrued, like open, honest, like clear communication is definitely key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
My
think
favorite.
these are super important stuff for new realtors to hear too, is the consistency part of this. It's like you might do something for 6 months and not see the outcome of it, but trust in the process, trust in people who've been there and done that, and just keep going. Keep pushing on it.
There's a gentleman and I'm just going to give some credit where credit is due. There's a gentleman in Canada who is also a realtor, and he came and did a class for us last year at some point, and that was my biggest takeaway from him. Rob DePiro with Exit Realty in Canada said, the only thing that's going to work is what you do consistently for the next 6 months or a year.
Absolutely.
So choose your lane, stay in it.